All right, so how to handle a woman pulling back. This is one of those things that can drive a lot of guys crazy and start to scramble, wondering, what should I do? How do I get her interest back up? So on and so forth. So in this video, I'm gonna equip you with everything you need to know on how to handle a pullback in the most masculine, high value way possible. So how this usually goes is you'll be talking to a girl, things are going good. Maybe you've gone on 1 date, 2 dates, 3 dates, so on and so forth. Maybe you've slept with her at this point. And all of a sudden, it seems like she's starting to pull back a bit. You feel something in your gut, something's just not right. Maybe her texts are a bit more dry than usual. Maybe she's just not as responsive as she usually is. And you can just sense that things just aren't how they were before. And what usually happens from there is it can send your mind into a bit of a spiral to where you're wondering, okay, how do I handle this? How do I handle this the right way? What do I do? What's the next right move to make in order to get things back to where they were? You might start overanalyzing her text or your own messages, trying to figure out where you went wrong, asking friends, Googling, watching YouTube videos, so on and so forth, just trying to figure out how do I fix the situation? However, once you start getting into this mindset of what should I do instead of what do I want to do, that's when you're starting to operate out of scarcity and lowering your own value. The reason why it lowers your value and it's the wrong mindset is you go from acting out of agency to trying to qualify yourself to the girl and trying to win her back or figure out the right tactic or strategy in order to get this woman back. You're reacting to your anxiety rather than standing in your own power. When you get into this mindset of, okay, how do I get her back or how do I get her interest back to where it was, you're automatically entering this mindset that is trying to qualify yourself to the woman, because obviously you're not qualifying her to you. You're trying to figure out what you can do to get her interest level up. And a big issue with this is you're getting into this energy of, how can I win her back? How do I raise her interest level up rather than, do I even want to deal with this in the first place? And naturally, there's usually the question of, why did this girl pull back in the first place? Or why do women pull back in general? But it's less about focusing on why does the girl pull back, and it's really about focusing more on what you control and what you don't control. Because sometimes a woman will pull back for reasons that have nothing to do with you, or reasons that you cannot control. Maybe there's another guy in the picture. Maybe she's been talking to a friends with benefits that she's hoping to win over herself. Or maybe her ex-boyfriend came back. Or maybe this girl just has other issues and relationship baggage from her past. So while it is important to pay attention to how you run these interactions to see if you genuinely did something that kind of did throw off things or there was kind of incongruent to who you actually are, it's also important to consider that at a certain point, it's simply out of your control. On the other side of this interaction, there's a whole nother person, and 50% of this interaction is up to another human being who can make her own choices. And sometimes those choices have absolutely nothing to do with you. So the first thing to do is stop taking her behavior so personally. Sometimes things are just out of your control, but it is intelligent and it is good to briefly look back on how things went from the time you met this girl to the dates or however long it's been since you met this woman and how far along you got, and genuinely ask yourself, okay, did I run a decent interaction here? Did I run things well? Or, was there something glaringly obvious that stands out? But if there's nothing that is obvious that really stands out, that feels like a huge, mess up on your part, then at a certain point, you just have to say, you know what? I can't control every little factor. But with that said, another thing to consider here is the woman's genuine interest level versus what you may have projected onto the situation. And what I mean by that is if you don't have a lot of experience with women, or maybe you do have a lot of experience with women, but it's mainly girls who you might have rated like a 6 or a 7, or maybe even an 8 or something, but now you're dealing with girls that you perceive as being like a 9 or a 10 on your scale, you may start to act out of character or start to project things onto the situation that aren't necessarily true. And one of those projections or delusions, honestly, is the idea that this girl is actually into a lot more than you think she is, or you think that things are actually going a lot better than they actually are. So what can happen then is if you misread the room and you're not accurately gauging where she's at in terms of her interest level and how into this whole thing that she actually is, you may think that things are going a lot better than they actually are, and then the girl pulls back and you're just shocked. But the thing is that her genuine interest was never really there to start with. She was more lukewarm. So this is something to be aware of, because sometimes you may think that you're acting in reality per se, but you're actually a little bit delusional, or you're projecting something onto the situation that isn't actually true. Now, with that said, if you find yourself starting to spiral because this woman pulled back or you find yourself in this anxious state where you're wondering, what happened? How do I get this girl back? How do I get her interest level up? That is really a sign that you're just out of balance in general in terms of your life as a whole. And the reason I say that is because if your life is fulfilling as a whole, you will care less and less about whether one woman stays or goes, or what happens early on in the dating process with this girl or that girl, or why this girl fell off, or why she did this thing. A lot of this over-analysis tends to go out the window because you are fulfilled in life in general. But when you are out of balance, these little things can just tip you in one direction or another. And that can go in a seemingly positive way too. Like you might have a girl come into your life that just feels like she just lights everything up and you finally feel complete, that kind of thing, right? But remember that a true abundance mindset is not just this mindset that knows he can get women whenever and has a lot of girls. That could be part of it. But a true abundance mindset is a mindset that can live a fulfilling life with or without a woman. So if you're lacking in general fulfillment in your life, you're going to tend to spiral when women throw confusing signals your way or they pull back. You may also be the type that gets overly attached to a situation really fast. And then again, it leads to more spiraling if things tend to go bad. Now, there's a key point here that I really want you to understand and internalize. And that is the fact that when it comes to a woman's attention, a woman pulling back, these things can affect you because you cannot rely on a woman's validation for your fulfillment. You have to fill your own cup. You have to fill yourself up from the inside out and live a fulfilling life on yourself in order to feel fulfilled. You cannot rely on the woman's validation and whether a woman stays or goes in order for you to feel fulfilled. That's just going to leave you in a very fragile state where you are subject to whatever she decides to do and her mood that day and so on and so forth. It's a very weak, low value position to be in. And really the root of fulfillment is being very solid in your identity, knowing who you are and being rock solid in that and not being moved by outside opinions. When you have a strong identity, it doesn't matter if people hate on you. It doesn't matter if a woman pulls back. None of these things matter because you know who you are and you are very, very solid in your own value and recognizing how valuable you actually are. So because of that, if you start to spiral, again, it's a hint that you're out of balance in general and your identity isn't firm. And when you're really firm in your identity, these things just won't rock you as much. They won't put you into that state of anxiety or trying to figure out, oh, what do I do next? And here with my stick figure illustration, my incredible art skills here, it's like when you're relying on a woman's validation, it's like you're waiting for her to project who you actually are. And that's what these lines mean right here. Again, high quality art, I know, but it's like you're looking at her to wait to see what she thinks about you so you can confirm your identity through her response, right? So if she pulls back, that shakes my identity if I'm not firm in my identity because she's telling me that I don't really have I don't have a high worth, right? So that reflects on my own self-worth and I start to feel like, okay, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Why is this girl leaving? How can I fix this? And again, sometimes maybe there is a genuine thing that you could fix. If women are pulling back over and over and over again, there's just a pattern in your life, there is something to adjust there, right? But if it's not this thing that happens over and over again, it's just this girl or that girl once in a while, that type of thing, you have to be firm in your identity. And I'm going to get into in a minute, like what you should actually do. But just understand that you can't let this woman define your self-worth. It should be more like this, where you're essentially just radiating this aura, right? You're radiating your identity, your self-worth, your value, right? And a woman can either choose to come into that aura or she can leave, right? So what this line represents right here is that your identity is independent of what she thinks. You're not reliant on her in order for you to feel valuable or to find out what your identity actually is. And a woman pulling back can trigger these types of thoughts in your head to where you kind of start feeling like, a little bit insecure or again, wondering what's wrong with you. You don't want to go to that level, right? So an analogy I used with some of my clients in my coaching program is it's like if you're walking down the street with white shoes on, your shoes are white. And if someone came up to you and said, hey man, those are nice black shoes. If you are very firm in understanding that your shoes are white, you're going to look at that guy and go, this guy's out of his mind. Like, what is he seeing? I don't have black shoes on. My shoes are white. But when you don't have a firm identity, what it's like is the person walks down the street and they go, hey, nice black shoes. And you look down and you go, oh, wait, maybe I do have black shoes on. I thought I had white shoes on. You're not firm in what your perception of yourself actually is. You're relying on other people to tell you what your actual worth is and what your identity is. And that's not a great position to be in, because you're going to be easily swayed by the opinions and the actions of other people. So that then leads to the question of, what do you do when you pull back? What is the higher value response? How do we act in a way that isn't insecure and that is in a way that is strong and projects masculinity and is genuinely coming from a place of strength within and not just an act that you're putting on? So what usually happens when a woman pulls back is guys will usually think, okay, I need to pursue her because she's moving away from me. There's a specific technique I need to use. There's a certain line. What do I say to this girl in order to throw the hook out there and reel her back in? But you're missing the larger signal. If she's pulling away and creating space between you two, the solution is to not encroach on that space. The solution is to allow her to have that space. Because if I start chasing her, chasing is a pushing force. It pushes people away from you. Instead, you want to view yourself more as a magnetic force rather than a pushing force. You're there, your aura, again, is just broadcasting this certain energy. Your value is broadcasting this certain energy. You as a man is broadcasting this certain energy. And if a woman is attracted to that, she will come into that magnetic force. But if you go chasing, you're pushing the woman away. It's the wrong move. So you want to respect that space that she's creating. The solution isn't to come up with some super slick technique to try and chase her, say the right thing, and reel her back in. Now, there's also a decision that you're going to have to make. If you want to follow up with this woman at some point after giving her that initial space, you can do it, but I would say 1 to 2 times max, and really 2 is pushing it. I'm at a point where I don't even like to follow up at all. That's just me. Like, if a woman actually wants to pull back, if she wants to create that space, then she can go. But the thing to understand about that is my strategy, because I'm filtering just for higher interest women and I don't have time to waste. So if you're like me, you can do that, but understand you are going to lose some women, because persistence can work. I just don't like to do it, because personally for me, I don't like how I feel when I'm persistent with a woman. I've always felt like it just was wrong. It didn't really agree with who I am. It never felt right for me to persist with women. It's just not something I like to do. Again, I'm not saying that it can't work. If you want to maximize the amount of women that you can get, persist with some of these women. Test the waters with it and see how it goes. I went through a phase a while back where, again, I was closed off to this idea of persistence. I just didn't want to do it. But I forced myself to do it with a few girls for a while. And some of those girls I did get out on dates and they were cool and everything. There wasn't really a negative experience. But what happened with those situations is usually when I persisted and got a woman out on a date, I wasn't really fully satisfied with the woman herself. I usually lost interest myself. It really wasn't worth the persistence. And again, it just didn't feel right for me. I don't like to persist personally, but it's not something that I'm against. If you want to optimize for that, if you want to optimize for the most amount of women, persisting could be necessary at some stages in order to do that. Because if you don't persist with some women, you just will leave women on the table. Let's just put it that way. There will be some women left on the table. But for me and my personal strategy, I don't even follow up. So when I say follow up 1 to 2 times max, I would say follow up once. Because here's the thing: the woman sees your text message. The woman sees if you call her and she has a missed call. She sees the message there. Women are glued to their phones all the time. So, if you want to push this to 2 times, that's up to you. I would space it out pretty significantly if you're going to do that. But personally, follow up once. If she doesn't bite, you need to move on from there. Because the mindset you should be operating with is, does she meet my standards? Rather than, how do I win this girl back, or how do I get her interest level up? At a certain point, and really right away, you should be asking yourself, does this really meet my standards? This is why I personally don't like to persist with women, because it doesn't meet my standard. If a girl is actually going to pull back, for me, that doesn't meet my standard of where I like her interest level to be at. So if she's actually going to pull back and I have to persist, that doesn't meet my standards. So I'm not going to go for it, right? I'm just going to let that situation go, because there's plenty of women on this earth. So if she can't even operate with decency to communicate, and have consistent communication, why do I want this woman in my life to begin with? Like, it's really worth asking yourself that instead of getting into this mindset of how do I get this girl back? You should be asking yourself, why do I even want this woman around anyway? And there's a lot of advice out there that'll tell you that the pullback is inevitable and that all women pull back, but that's not true. And this is something to really screen for too if you're looking for, you're screening a woman for potential long-term relationship potential. If a woman pulls back like that, especially early on in the process, and you have to persist in order to get her to come back and to raise her interest level, I wouldn't consider that woman for a relationship. And assuming that things went well, you ran the interaction well, you ran the date well, it was a good experience if you slept with the woman, so on and so forth, you're texting, you're messaging, all these things were just generally run well, there's a certain point where this woman is either on board or she's not, right? I'm not going to sit there and try to convince this woman of my value or convince her to like me or chase her hoping that she'll come to me. You just have to value yourself more than that. And I know there's guys out there that are just fans of like persisting, and they'll say that you have to persist multiple times with some women. And again, if you're looking for like hookups and things like that, or just trying to get a woman out on a date, that can be true in some cases, but it's just not my game. And another common thing you'll hear mentioned is guys will sometimes say, well, a girl pulling back could be a test. And to that, I just say, if she wants to test me by pulling back, she can have that test. I'm not gonna pass that test. I'm not gonna pursue her in order to pass her test and have her come back. She can go. So, if you want to do that, that's up to you, but I don't recommend doing that. If a woman is running a pullback as a test, she can go. And the mindset you want to have is, if this woman doesn't come back, cool. We just cleared space for a woman who actually wants to be here and is actually higher value than this woman. A woman is inherently low value to you if she's not interested in you. So why would you want to keep her around anyway? Why would you want to raise her interest level and hope that she hooks and she stays with you? I personally want a woman to stick around because she wants to be with me and she genuinely desires being with me. Not that I had to run this perfect technique in order to reel her back in when she was trying to pull away from me. So if a woman does this, you follow up maybe once or twice, or maybe you don't follow up at all. What you want to do from there is just keep your same energy, move on, go talk to other women, do other things. Don't allow it to reflect on your self-worth. Don't allow this woman who made a decision that may or may not be based on you in the first place. Again, there's a whole variety of reasons that this woman may have pulled back, and there's other things that could be going on in her life, or maybe she just wasn't into the situation that much to begin with. Don't let her decision get on the inside of you and affect your own self-worth. You have to be rock solid in your identity. You have to know who you are. And you have to understand that some situations just aren't going to pan out. Even if you run a good interaction, even if you do all the right things, so to speak, sometimes it just doesn't pan out. And that's okay, because there are more women. There are women who are a better fit for you. And it's not about winning every single woman over anyway. In fact, you don't want to win women over at all. You want to find the women who choose you, the women who genuinely want to be around you. So if a woman pulls back and she's creating that space, give her that space. If you want to follow up once or twice with her, do so in a non-needy way. It's up to you how many times you want to do that. You already heard my opinion on that. But don't chase these women. Don't smother her. Don't try to find the perfect technique to reel her back in and all this stuff. Let that woman go if she doesn't want to be there. And start disqualifying more of these women more often. That's something that like every guy needs to do more often, is just disqualify women. Be more ruthless with your screening process. Be the one that disqualifies these women for shitty behavior. Don't just tolerate this shit. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, you have to be the one who says, this does not meet my standard. Don't get stuck in this mindset of, what's the technique? What do I do? What do I say? How do I get her back? How do I get this girl? How do I get that girl? Like, man, look for the women who are choosing you. Yeah, make the approach. Reach out to the girl. Match on the dating app. Make sure that you're generally running these things correctly. But at a certain point, you got to ask these women who aren't on your program, who aren't into it. And don't allow these women to get you in this anxious mindset, so where you're trying to win over this woman who didn't even want to be there in the first place, right? And that's why I say talk to other women too. So make sure that you're not over investing in one girl. So if she pulls back, the whole house of cards falls down. Keep talking to other women, generate more options, diversify your investments just like you would with finances. And if you want my help to achieve your dream dating life and optimize your ability to generate options and come up with a dating strategy and a dating plan that fits your unique situation in your life, and you're a man that just does not have time to waste just like me, then be sure to fill out a quick application down in the description below for a chance to work with me directly in my coaching program. And I will see you in the next one.